of Pyathlon. Today we'll be talking about functions. Now we'll be using the same notebook from the last video, so if you haven't seen that video, you can please go back and watch that and that'll help you understand what's going on in this video. But in a nutshell, we have this program that takes in the user's age using the input function and then checks to see if the user input is valid, and then if their age is greater than or equal to 65, they are eligible for a discount. If their age is between 60 and 64, they can get a partial discount, otherwise they're not eligible for a discount. And if they enter some invalid input, then we let them know that. So let's talk about functions now. So if you want to reuse this code, you would have to copy and paste this code and then place it in another cell and then run it again. And that's a very inefficient way to write code because you have all this duplicate code. Functions help you solve this problem, so let's delete this cell. So what is a function? A function is a block of code that you assign a name to, and that makes it reusable because you can just type in that name and call or invoke your function, and then you can run the same code without having to write it out again. You can just call the function that has the code you want to run inside of it. So our first exercise today will be converting this to a function. We'll do this in another cell so you can compare and contrast what code that's not in a function looks like as opposed to code that is within a function. So in order to define a function in Python, you have to use the def keyword, DEF, and that's short for define, and it lets Python know that you're going to be defining a function. So for now, we'll just put all of our code inside of our function, and we'll talk more about how you decide what goes into a function or what does not go into a function later on in this functions part of the series. So we need to give our function a name after this def keyword. So we'll say def discount underscore checker. Note how your function name is in blue and the def keyword is in green. And this is a function, so you need to have parentheses after your function name. We'll talk a lot about these parentheses in future videos because there's a lot of interesting things you can do here. And every time you declare a function, you have def, your function name, open and close parenthesis, and then you have a colon, and since it's a colon, everything inside of your function needs to be indented. So to place code inside of your function, you can just paste it in. And our indentation is a little off here, but remember in the last video we talked about how you can do command and then close bracket to indent some code. And we also want to get the age in their function, so we'll add this line at the start of our function. And now we have this function called def discount checker, and when we run that, we get an error, which means we need to fix something. Oh yes, all of this should be indented. Okay, so now when we run that, it works. But we don't see any output, and that's because all we did is define what the function is. So we said we have a function called discount checker, and this is the code it's going to run. But it doesn't do anything because we haven't called or invoked our function yet. When you call a function, some people call it function invocation, so you're invoking a function. Some people just say you're calling a function. It's the exact same thing. And to call our function, all we have to do is type the name of our function and then parentheses. Now, this isn't how you call every function. Sometimes you'll have to put something within these parentheses, but we'll talk more about that in a later video. So for now, we'll just run this cell, and all of this is run. So this line is running first. It asks us what is our age. We'll say 66 and hit enter, and it says you're eligible for the discount. And once again, so the code in here works exactly the same as this code up here. The only difference is we've embedded the code inside of a function. Prior to this video, if you wanted to run this code, you would run this entire cell block. And if you wanted to run this code multiple times in your program, you'd have to just copy and paste your code or retype your code. It's very inefficient. Functions make your code reusable, and they make your program a lot easier to read. Functions are an absolute essential when it comes to programming. And so you really want to wrap your head around how these functions work and what you can do with them. And in the next video, we'll be talking more about arguments and parameters and how you can make your functions more flexible. But for the remainder of this video, I just want to bring up one point, and that's how we have this function defined. This isn't ideal, And that's because this function is doing multiple things. This function is getting the age of the user, it's doing user input validation, and it actually has the logic to check to see if they're eligible for the discount. When you're dealing with functions, it's typically best if one function only does one thing. So I just thought about 3 examples of what this function is doing. So perhaps maybe this one function should really be broken into 3 functions. And once you start learning about arguments and parameters, you'll be able to incorporate a better workflow into your code, which is what we'll be discussing in the next video. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.